my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so for the 15 or so of you that are here, thanks for joining. The reason why we wanted to do this, Ash kind of reached out to me. Several people have posted photos recently, trying to get like snake identification photos, or just have questions about hiking with snakes, since it's almost snake season here in Tennessee. So I just kind of have been answering people's questions. So Ash asked if I could like do a little presentation to try to inform people just a little bit more about snakes. So I know a ton of people that are absolutely terrified of snakes, and the actual statistic is 51% of Americans say that they are terrified of snakes. And that's even more than public speaking, which to me is so crazy because for me, I'm like, public speaking. The snakes are cool. So I want to give you guys just a little, if it'll work, maybe. There we go. I want to give you guys a little bit background about myself and as to why I'm the person giving this talk today. So I got my master's at Missouri State. And during my master's work, I actually worked with anti-predator behavior of cottonmouths. So I played with venomous snakes all day for like a year and a half. Aside from that, I've worked on multiple National Park Service teams doing a ton of field work. Currently, I work at the University of Tennessee managing a plant ecology research lab. And then I'm an avid hiker, and in the summer, I'm also a river guide on the Pigeon River. So with that, I am outside a lot, and I've run into snakes a lot on the trails. And it always saddens me when people are like, kill the snakes, or they just talk about how much they hate them, because they're actually really cool, and your chances of actually getting harmed by a snake are virtually zero. So I just wanted to give you all some background information today about snakes, teach you guys kind of how to tell the good ones, aka the non-venomous, from the venomous snakes. Give you some tips about hiking on trails that may have snakes, and just some stuff like that. All right, so why are snakes cool? So snakes have been around for about 100 million years, and there's more than 3,700 species worldwide, and they're found on every continent except Antarctica, which is pretty cool. So snakes actually make up the largest group of reptiles other than lizards. They are ectotherms, meaning that their environment or what controls their body temperature, which is why we typically only see them in the summer, because it's when they're warm and active. A lot of us learned back in like elementary school that the big difference between reptiles and mammals is that reptiles lay eggs and mammals give live births, but that's actually not true. 2/3 of snake species lay eggs, and the other third give live births in the spring, which is pretty cool. And snakes don't have eyelids or ears. So snakes always have their eyes open, including when they sleep, which is kind of creepy, but kind of cool at the same time. And since they don't have external ears, they actually can't hear us. They more so just feel vibrations. So unlike a bear, if you see a snake on the trail, don't yell at it. It's not going to go anywhere. All right. So aside from snakes being pretty cool, they are very important to our ecosystem. They help balance our food web. So they are carnivores, and they do mostly eat small mammals such as mice, rats, birds, possums, even some frogs and other snakes. So snakes and other reptiles, since they are carnivores, they do make up a large portion of our middle class predators, and they act as a natural form of pest control. So without snakes, we would actually be overrun with vermin, which we all know they damage crops and they carry diseases, including tick-borne illnesses, because ticks often latch onto rodents. So they are both predator and prey, and larger animals feed on them. So they carry out really our whole food web structure. And you don't have to like snakes, but just respect them. Don't kill them. All right, so let's get into the snakes that we have here in Tennessee. So in Tennessee, we have 34 species of snakes. I couldn't find a poster that had all 34 for the whole state. So this is just a photo of the 23 species that we have here in East Tennessee, because I'm in Knoxville. Throughout the state, we only actually have 4 venomous species, and 2 of them are only found in very western Tennessee. And it's important to note for what we're going to talk about in a little bit that all 4 of our venomous snakes are pit vipers. All right, so these 6 snakes are the most common snakes in the state of Tennessee. So these are probably the ones that most people are going to run into, just kind of in an everyday situation. So green snakes and rat snakes and black racers oftentimes, and garter snakes will oftentimes be found in fields or around houses. Our water snakes are going to be found near rivers, ponds, lakes, really any sort of water. And then copperheads are our only super duper common venomous snake. And those can be in fields or woodlands. They really like to hang out around rocks and fallen logs, although they can be found anywhere. All right, so let's dig into when the snakes are most active and where they like to hang out. So snakes are going to be most active in Tennessee from April to October, when the temperatures start to warm up. As the temperature starts to cool, they hibernate. And I have hibernate in quotes because they actually don't truly hibernate. It's what is called brumation. They become less active and their metabolism slows way down, but they don't actually hibernate. So if a warm day happens in mid-January, they can't actually come out and feed or bask in the sun. And then when it starts to cool down again, they'll go back into their little hibernaculums, which are usually like under rocks or logs underground somewhere. So since we know that snakes regulate their body temperature from their surroundings, it makes sense that when it's warm in the spring and summer, that's when they're going to be active. And they're also going to be active in the warmest part of the day. So they're typically going to start slowing their activity down once nighttime approaches and the temperatures start to drop. And during the day, most of the time, snakes are going to be basking on rocks or in the sunlight. So as I said in the beginning, 51% of Americans say they're deadly afraid of snakes. But truth be told, 100% of snakes are terrified of us. Usually, or as I said, like snakes, they don't have eyelids. They don't have the best eyesight either. Mostly they see shapes rather than details. So they have a hard time actually even seeing us if we're approaching them. Instead, they use vibrations to detect movement. So the vast majority of the time, if they feel a vibration coming toward them, they're more than likely just going to scurry away because they're afraid of us. But some other senses that they have, they can smell and taste. So if you see a snake that is flicking their tongue a lot, they are actually trying to get a sense of their environment. They can smell odors from prey and predators using this thing called the Jacobson organ that's in the roof of their mouth. And then our pit vipers actually have heat sensing organs. So they can tell like when a warm animal compared to like a tree, where if you're standing next to a tree, most snakes probably can't distinguish you from a tree because they don't have great eyesight. It's also really important to note that no snakes in the US will chase you. I know I've run into so many people that are like, oh my gosh, I got chased by this snake. And that's simply not the case. Snakes do not go after you. The only known snake that will do that is the bushmaster, and that's only found around the Amazon River Basin. So we don't have to worry about that here. So no snake should be coming after you. And it's also important to note that a bite from a snake is really the last-ditch effort for the snake to avoid harm. So the chances of a snake actually trying to bite you or go after you is slim to none, especially if you're not trying to handle the snake. All right, so the real reason we're here, all of us go hiking. So if you walk outside, you're automatically in snake habitat. So I wanted to give you all some tips for how to safely hike in snake habitats. I know some people really stress out about snakes, but fear not. You have a 1 in 50 millionth chance of actually getting bit by a snake. So you have a way better chance of getting in a car wreck on the way to a hike or even getting bit by a dog than getting bit by a snake. So one thing, as I mentioned earlier, snakes are less active in cooler parts of the day. So by starting your hike in cooler parts of the day, when the snakes are less active, you have a lesser chance of running into snakes on the trail. You can hike in groups. This is going to create larger vibrations that'll hopefully scare off the snakes as you walk down the trail. Or you can try to choose a wide or popular trail if you're really concerned about snakes. Wide trails are going to often have less down logged and less leaf litter, which are usually where snakes hang out. And then popular trails have the added benefit of having more people on the trail. And as with any wildlife, in super noisy, disturbed areas, animals probably aren't going to hang around there. Anytime that you're out and about, you should always watch where you place your hands, and when you're going over logs, always watch your step. And this is actually how most snake bites occur, is by people accidentally stepping on them or handling them. Another thing that you can do is always wear sturdy hiking boots. I am absolutely terrible about this. I hike in chacos a lot. But it's not smart, especially if there's any chance that you're going to be going off trail. Boots are just good. They can help with lots of injuries. I need to follow my own advice. If you're hiking with kids or pets, you should also keep them close by. Both pets and kids are a lot more curious than adults. So just by keeping them on the trail, you're keeping them out of potentially digging into areas where snakes or other animals could be hiding out. Also, if you're carrying trekking poles or a hiking stick, you can use it in front of you, kind of like a probe. The vast majority of the time, if a snake is under leaf litter and you start probing at it, it's just going to move away. So I know a lot of us hike with our pets, me included. So I wanted to kind of give some special considerations to keep in mind if you are hiking with your dog. You should always keep your dog on the trail and leashed. I know a lot of people have their dog unleashed in the vast majority of the time. It's fine. But if you do have them unleashed, it's a good idea to kind of teach them maybe like a leave it command or something like that. If you see them start digging their nose into something, where you can be like, leave it alone. Because the vast majority of the time that a dog gets bit, that's how it happened, is them sticking their nose in places and then the snake biting them. You should never leave your dog unattended on trails or even at campsites. And if your dog does happen to get bit by a snake, it can take anywhere from 1 to 24 hours after the bite happens for them to develop symptoms. If you know it happened, you should take them to an emergency vet immediately. If you suspect that it may have happened, I would take them to the vet. Dogs can have Benadryl, so I would give them a Benadryl and then just get them to the emergency vet. Typically, if a non-venomous snake bites a dog, there could be puncture wounds and maybe a little bit of swelling in blood. But the venomous snakes are obviously the bigger issue, and they can cause tremors, vomiting, dilated pupils, increased salivation, other behavioral changes. So if you notice anything weird with your dog while hiking and you suspect a snake bite, definitely take them to the vet as soon as you can. All right, so now you're out hiking. What should you do if you happen to encounter a snake on the trail? So the vast majority of the time that you encounter a snake on the trail, it's going to be slithering across the trail. So like both of these photos up here, there's a timber rattlesnake on the right and a garter snake on the left. Both of those I took while hiking, and I was just walking and it just slithered across the trail in front of me, made a great photo op. So the vast majority of the time, they're just gonna keep moving and they're not gonna be an issue. If you see one, just stop, hang out a second, hopefully it moves off the trail. But if they don't, you can not throw rocks at it. Don't do that. So if it doesn't move after you stopped, you don't want to throw rocks at it. You don't want to prod it with a stick or try to pick it up. This is just going to agitate it even more, and that's what could potentially trigger a defensive response from the snake. So the best case is you just walk around the snake. But if there's no way to bypass it, you could stomp your feet from a safe distance. So the striking range of most snakes is about half of their body length. So as long as you're a couple body lengths away from the snake and start stomping your feet, they should feel those vibrations and move. All right, so now we're going to talk about the scarier ones, the venomous snakes. So I have this diagram up because anyone who works with snakes, this is a huge pet peeve, the difference of a poisonous snake versus a venomous snake. So snakes are venomous, they're not poisonous. So poisonous means that you're ingesting the toxin. So if you were to go up and bite this poison dart frog, you would be poisoned by the dart frog. Where a venomous snake, they bite you and inject venom into you, making them venomous versus poisonous. So as I said earlier, the big thing in Tennessee, we only have 4 venomous snakes and they are all pit vipers. So what I'm about to say about how to distinguish between venomous and non-venomous only applies to pit vipers versus non-venomous. Once you get outside of the state and you get into like coral snakes, and there's some weird snakes down in Florida that shouldn't be there that are now there. And especially when you get outside of the United States and you start talking about like South America, India, like Australia, all these places that have like crazy venomous snakes, this won't apply. So just keep this in mind for Tennessee, and that is it. So there's 2 ways of distinguishing our venomous snakes from non-venomous snakes, and that's going to be the head shape and the pupil shape. So venomous snakes are always going to have this slanted pupil and a triangular shaped head, where all of our non-venomous snakes are going to have a much narrower rounded head and round pupils. And I think it's also important to note that venom is essentially just a really highly modified saliva. So venomous snakes have these fangs that are paired with a venom canal. So when they bite you, they deliver the venom into the bite. And there's 4 different classes of toxins that can make up venom. And so every venomous snake has a different composition of venom. So you have cytotoxins, which can cause local tissue damage, eventually leading to necrosis. There's hemotoxins, which can cause internal bleeding, leading to clotting. There's neurotoxins, which affect the nervous system and the brain, and that can lead to muscle weakness and respiratory paralysis. And then there's also cardiotoxins, which can act directly on our heart. So as far as our venomous snakes that we have here in Tennessee, as I said earlier, copperheads are by far the most common venomous snake that we have here, and it's found all throughout the state. But the good news with that is they're the least venomous of the venomous snakes that we have here in Tennessee. They have this very distinct Hershey kiss-shaped pattern on the side, and they're typically in forested habitats or rocky wooded hillsides that have a bunch of logs and leaf litter and rocks. They're actually extremely docile compared to most venomous snakes, and they are not going to strike unless they're stepped on or extremely agitated. My old advisor actually used to take a copperhead to elementary schools with him for like science days and whatnot, and he would put it on the ground next to him and just stomp all around it just to kind of show like, look, the snake is not out to hurt you. It's not going to do anything. So the vast majority of the time, they're actually just not going to care. They're going to stay curled up unless they really, really feel threatened.
I have a funny copperhead story.
Yeah.
When I first moved here from Florida, I didn't know what they were because we don't really have them. And I was hiking along over in Chattanooga, and I come 6 inches from what I now know was a baby copperhead. And I've had snakes growing up my whole life. I had like a 15-foot python, all kinds of stuff. I know like their behavior. So I wasn't really scared, you know. I was like, oh, hey, little guy. I got my phone out. We had a little photo shoot. I got pretty close to him, and he wasn't acting agitated. You know, he just seemed unbothered. And I was like, all right, guy. And I got like some really good pictures up close of this snake that could potentially kill me. And I had no idea. But he wasn't angry or aggressive, like you were saying. He was just chilling. And had I tried messing with him, he probably would have lashed out. But, you know, he didn't really care. He just wanted to mind his business. He didn't mind having some pictures taken, put on the internet, you know. But they're pretty cool. And those are the snakes I hear a lot of people being afraid of, I guess, because they are like one of the most common venomous snakes that you'll see on the trail. I sadly saw one with its head broken on Laurel Falls a couple months ago due to somebody else seeing it, I guess, and killing it. But that's why we're having this thing, because I want people to not do that.
Yeah.
So I just want to interject there.
Yeah, and so with that, like copperheads most of the time also do dry bites. So if they do bite, they're not even injecting venom. And copperhead venom is actually like one of the most, or the least toxic out of all the venoms. Like any snake or any venomous snake, you should definitely go to a doctor, which we'll get to in a little bit. But the treatment for a copperhead bite, unless you have an extreme allergic reaction to it, they're just going to give you Benadryl. Like I said, everyone's body reacts different. There are some people that are highly allergic to it, but copperheads are definitely the least of concern when it comes to venomous snakes in our state anyway. So the second most common venomous snake in Tennessee is the timber rattlesnake. And depending where you are, it's also called the canebrake rattlesnake. But it is usually going to be found in forested areas or rocky hillsides. And it's found really all throughout Appalachia. I used to work at Shenandoah National Park in Virginia, and like these were everywhere up there. But it's very common to see them coiled on fallen logs or sunning on rocks. They have really, really distinct bands, and I think they're actually like one of the prettier snakes that we have in Tennessee. And like a lot of the times you'll get these ones that have like these really bright like orange patterns, kind of like the one on the left, or the one on the or in the middle is kind of more blends in with the scenery. But timbers have this really large rattle, and the vast majority of the time when you get close to it, they're going to let you know that they see you or sense you, and they're going to start rattling that tail. So when I was actually working in Shenandoah, I was doing some like leaf litter samples, and I bent down on a hillside to scoop up some leaves, and all of a sudden I hear this rattle, and I look down, and this snake is just like staring me in the face. And I would have reached my hand right onto it if it wouldn't have started rattling at me. And I basically fell on my butt backwards because it scared the crap out of me. But it let me know it was there. And as soon as I looked again, it had already slithered off. It didn't want me there. And also that's kind of the same type pattern I've had when I've had run-ins on trails. They've always kept moving. I've never had a timber just stop and stay there. All right, on to our third venomous snake. So cottonmouths, aka the water moccasins. These are only going to be found in Western Tennessee. So all of us East Tennessee folks, we don't have to worry about that. These are also the ones that I worked with during my master's. They are feisty little fellas. They will probably put on the most defensive displays out of any venomous snake that we have here in the state. These are mainly going to be in like murky, warmer waters, such as what's around like the Mississippi River, wetlands, drainage ditches. They are most often confused with water snakes, but you can distinguish them by their head shape and, again, their eye shape. So the cottonmouths are going to have that triangular shaped head and the vertical slit pupils. I know, while we're talking about cottonmouths, so both cottonmouths and water snakes, a lot of people I've heard, they've been like, I was in a pond or a lake and this snake, it started chasing me. And that's not the case. Again, they don't chase. They're probably just in the water trying to go from one side to the other, and that's it. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't swim up to it because there is the chance it could be a cottonmouth and not a water snake, but it's not coming after you. So I actually have a video on the next slide of some of the like aggressive behaviors of the cottonmouth, just because since I worked with them in my master's and I had a video, why not? So here we have a little cottonmouth, and backstory on this, I have a predatory red-tailed hawk silhouette flying above it. And so this is its reaction to it. So you can see its tongue flicking pretty fast. So it's trying to, in its tail going. So it's trying to collect information from its surroundings as far as predator and prey go. And it's shaking its tail like a rattlesnake just to kind of try to scare, even though it doesn't have a rattle. And then here in a second, we'll see it gape, so open its mouth and try to show its fangs to the predator that's flying above it. So if you see one in the wild, it'll probably do all these things because they're feisty little boogers. And our fourth venomous snake, aka the cutest one, and Joy found a pygmy a few days ago on the trail and sent me a photo, and it's so cute. So the pygmy rattlesnakes are also only going to be found in western Tennessee, and they're the smallest of the rattlesnake species. Usually they only get up to like a foot or foot and a half long when they're full size. They can get up to maybe a little bit bigger, but full grown foot, foot and a half. That's it. They have a teeny little rattle that sounds like an insect. And so unless you're like very, very close, you're not going to hear it. They usually hang out pretty close to water, but not in the water. So like floodplains or upland glades, things like that. They have a really distinct polka dot pattern, which is very cute. It's also important to know I've never seen one pygmy in the wild, and that was because I had a friend that was working with pygmies, and they have super duper tiny home ranges. So like, and a home range is just like where an animal will actually move. So like pygmies, some of his snakes never left more than a couple of acres for an entire season. So they're not very active. So if you're hiking, the chances of you seeing one probably are pretty slim.
Yeah, that one was pretty much an accident. I turned around and he was laying on the anthill. So yeah, it was
a good find.
It was a lucky find. But he just laid there and you know, we were there for about a minute and a half looking at him. And I mean, I was about a foot away and I couldn't hear the rattle.
Yeah. All right, so now we're gonna get into what happens for that 1 in 50 million that happen to get bit. So if you get bit by a non-venomous snake and you know that the snake was non-venomous, all you really need to do is clean the wound area with soap and water, bandage it appropriately because more than likely a bite is gonna draw blood. And as with any open wound, if you haven't had a tetanus shot lately, you should definitely go to a clinic and get your tetanus booster, which they recommend that every 10 years. So if you hike or really do anything outside, it's always a good idea to keep your tetanus booster up to date. And then you should just keep an eye on it till it's healed, because with any puncture wound, you have that possibility of getting an infection. And if that happens, go see your doctor. But if you don't know that if it was venomous or non-venomous, follow what I'm going to say on the next page about venomous bites. All right. So worst case scenario, you happen to get bit by a venomous snake. So first thing you need to do, which is the hardest thing, is to just stay calm. You don't want to try get your heart rate up. That's just going to move the venom through your body even faster. You don't want to capture the snake. Instead, try to take either a mental image of it, or if you have your phone and feel like you can take a photo of it, or someone's with you to take a photo of it, just so you can show the doctor what actually bit you. Never, ever, ever use snake bite kits or suction devices, and we'll get to more of that on the next slide. If you have any jewelry on, you want to remove that in case of swelling. You don't want to drink alcohol or take any pain relievers to numb the pain. And you also don't want to drink caffeine. You should try to limit your movement as much as possible. That'll help keep your heart rate down. And you should clean the wound the best you can using whatever you have in your first aid kit. And if you're close to a trailhead, you should slowly walk out and seek medical attention immediately, whether that be getting driven to a hospital or calling 911 for an ambulance. But most of the time, we are not going to be close to civilization when things hit the fan. So if you do have cell service, call 911. If you're in a group, you could send someone to go get medical help. But if you're alone and without cell service, the best thing you can do is just calmly try to walk yourself out and either call 911 as soon as you get cell service, or drive yourself to a hospital. But the good news is that half of all envenomations are actually the dry bites, meaning no venom is going to be injected. And most of the time, if you get medical treatment within 12 to 24 hours of a bite, you're going to be totally fine. And typically your body is going to start having a reaction within that first hour. So if it's been like 2 hours since and you still haven't had a reaction, you're probably not going to. It's still good to seek medical help, but you're probably going to be fine. And it's also important to note, oh, sorry, what was that?
Okay. Just want to point out my father, when he was 4, got bit by 4 baby pygmy rattlers that were in a bag. It was a joke played by a neighborhood kid. And he went to the hospital, his arm was all purple and stuff, but he's fine. So if a 4-year-old can survive 4 pygmy rattler bites, we can too.
And baby snakes often haven't learned how to gauge their venom yet. And so they'll often inject more or none at all into you because they haven't learned. Like most adult snakes, they've kind of figured out how much they should inject for a certain size mouse or whatever their prey items are. And so, yeah, like babies are the ones to worry about.
Yeah.
But it's also important. So my advisor, he had been working with snakes for 30 plus years with cottonmouths and other venomous snakes. And he actually got his first bite a year and a half, 2 years ago. And it was at like a middle or high school, I forget which, another like science day. And he had brought all these snakes. And typically, like when a herpetologist is bringing snakes places, they put a snake in like a pillowcase and tie it. And that's what everyone does. Everyone does. And this cottonmouth bit him through the bag, and he just like grabbed his arm, walked off the stage, and told this grad student, like, you're gonna have to do the presentation, and drove himself to the hospital. And like his arm was super swollen, and I think he was in the hospital like 24 hours or so. But I mean, he got full mobility back to his hand and everything was fine, but it was just like a day or two of like super duper swelling, and it was just crazy. Like after 30 years, he got bit by a snake at a school function.
So it is relatively rare, obviously, if he
Yes.
handles snakes every day.
Yeah. So once in 30 years, I feel like, it's not super
Pretty
terrible.
good odds.
Yeah. So I've seen multiple people, both on the Girls Who Hike Tennessee page, as well as other hiking pages, saying that they carry snake bite kits, kind of like a safety blanket or like a just in case anything were to happen. If you have one, please trash it. They're total wives' tale. If you take a wilderness first aid course or like a wilderness first responder, there's a reason why they don't teach you about snake bite kits. It's not that they don't want you to have them, just for the sake of not having them. They don't work. So kind of think about it this way. If you go get, say, your flu shot and they inject the shot into your arm and you reach for your snake bite suction device, put it on your arm after your vaccine and try to withdraw it, like you're not going to withdraw that vaccine. Like it's already entered into your body. And venom at that point has already entered your bloodstream and has started pumping through your blood. It doesn't stay in one spot like a mosquito bite. So like they have those suction devices now for mosquito bites, and those actually do work because the mosquito bite doesn't go super deep, so you can actually extract that venom. But a snake, you're not going to extract that venom. It's already absorbed into the bloodstream, so it just doesn't work. So the other things that you should not do if you get bit is you never want to apply a tourniquet. Some people think that cutting off the blood circulation is going to keep the venom in one extremity, like say your foot, rather than pumping it through the rest of your body. That's also not the case. And instead, it's going to increase your potential for losing an extremity because you are cutting off blood supply to that area. You also never want to make an incision. Some people think you can drain the venom once it has entered your body. That's not the case. Instead, you're just going to end up with tissue damage in that area. So it's best just not to try to extract venom yourself. And you also don't want to apply ice to it. This can also cause unnecessary tissue damage. So if you do get bit and you go to the hospital, hospitals typically have anti-venom for all the venomous snakes in the area that you're in. And there's actually like a farm, an anti-venom farm, and I want to say it's either Indiana or Ohio. And this family has like all of these crazy exotic snakes that people keep as pets and keep their antivenom there, and they will charge an insane price, but they can fly you anti-venom for these like crazy snakes that people release in Florida. So it's an option. But yeah, so hospitals typically keep antivenom, and that's the best thing you can do because antivenom, it's going to kind of cancel out the venom. It's not going to extract it from your body. All right, so to wrap up, we'll kind of talk about some snake bite statistics. So in Tennessee, most of the snake bites occur in the active season, so in between April and October. Copperheads are by far the most common bite in Tennessee, but like I said earlier, it's the least severe bite of them, so that's good. Nationwide, there's only between 8,000 and 10,000 snake bites a year, and over 3,000 of those bites are from people handling or messing with snakes purposely. So, I mean, you cut your chances way, way down if you just don't touch the snakes. There's typically only around 5 people every year that die from snake bites. So, like I said, pretty slim to none. And most of the people that end up dying, they have a severe allergic reaction to one of the toxins that's in the venom, which again, like I said, everyone's body reacts differently. So the best thing you can do is just get to a hospital as quick as you can. And as I said earlier too, approximately 50% of all bites are going to be dry bites, meaning no venom is actually extracted. And more than 85% of the bites occur below the knee. So by wearing hiking boots, that should also drastically reduce your chances of getting bit, and just by keeping aware of your surroundings and kind of watching where you're stepping your feet. And then like the scariest thing is if you happen to have a disability or permanent injury, and these are more common with rattlesnake bites. Between 10 and 44% of people that get bit by rattlesnakes end up with some kind of permanent injury, whether it be like nerve damage in the part of the body that they were bit, or some people may like lose a finger, or stuff like that. But again, you have a 1 in 50 millionth chance of getting bit. So please, please, please don't let that be what keeps you from getting out and going hiking. And so with that, we can do some questions, but I wanted to put this link up here. I got a lot of my photos and information from this webpage. It's about all the snakes that we have here in Tennessee. And before people ask questions, I just want to throw out that I'm not a herpetologist. So I'll try my best to answer questions. But if I don't know the answer, I definitely know the right people to ask to get you the answers. Does anyone have any questions for me?
So, Kristen, I actually live in North Georgia. Are there any other venomous snakes around here?
So coral snakes, I think, are the only other species that they have in some parts of Georgia. And those are the ones that are the red, yellow, and black banded. But I believe those are the only other ones in Georgia, other than what we have in Tennessee.
Okay.
And it's, what is it? The saying, it's black. Oh,
Red touches yellow, venomous fellow.
red touches yellow, kills a fella. That's what I was going for.
But that's also one of those things that's not true once you get south of the border. So if you ever vacation in the tropics, toss that phrase right out.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to stress, like, this venomous versus non-venomous, very much pit vipers in Tennessee. And coral snakes, they're not pit vipers. So that you can kind of go off the banded, red touches yellow is the venomous. But they do not have a triangular shaped head.
Their heads are actually black. And that's one of the differences you can also tell between them and the king snake.
Yeah, I was gonna. Ooh. Well, I was gonna try to pull one up, but maybe not.
I did find that picture of the young copperhead. I want to show it to you at some point. I don't think I can do like picture sharing here, but
Oh, you can.
I can.
Yeah.
See, I'm still learning this. Share content. Okay. Photos. Allow access. There it is.
Oh.
Everybody's, yeah. It was very small. I got really close to get that picture.
Yeah, I've had so many run-ins. Like, I used to work in Kansas, and the largest timber rattlesnake hibernaculum was like less than a mile from our field sites. And so multiple times throughout the summer, we would find little baby timber rattlesnakes just like curled up in our plots. And so after that, we'd have to like get in there and prod around before sticking our hands in.
Yeah, I was kind of like hiking downhill, and it was just relaxing in the leaves under the trees. And I was kind of like going at a quick pace because it was downhill, which is why I kind of got so close to it before I realized. And I looked over, and it didn't budge. It didn't budge the whole time I sat there taking this picture. But he I could have easily stepped on him, which would have been a problem.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find my pygmy.
Carmen, I just saw your comment. No, don't let your anxiety go through the roof.
Really? No, really, it's not that bad. Look, Joy and I are both from Florida, and we have more venomous and aggressive snakes down there. And I have only ever seen one not water snake, but cottonmouth in my life. and maybe like one wild rattler, and I go hiking all the time, and I have been my whole life. They really don't want to bother you. You know, like she was saying, if you're walking along, most of the time they feel your vibrations and they get off the trail. And from a place where we have way more dangerous animals, including alligators and all that kind of stuff, they're really, really not all that bad. You're walking around in their house, just be aware that they're there, give them space, respect their privacy, do the best that you can.
Yeah.
And like she was saying, you know, the most dangerous times is when you accidentally step on one or molest one. You know, you don't realize that you're, you know, maybe picking up a stick for a fire and there's a snake down there. You know, you kind of gotta make sure that there's no snakes running around down in there. Same thing with wasps. The only time I've gotten stung by a wasp was when I was burrowing around inside with some dead leaves, and I've lived
Way
around
more
wasps
afraid
my
of
whole life.
wasps than yellow jackets.
Yeah, no, I've gotten stung by a wasp once and a yellow jacket once, and both times they did never come after me. I was in their space on accident. And it's the same thing with snakes. They'll hurt you if they have to, but they really don't want to. It's not to their benefit. They have to extend that energy that they build up to do that.
Yeah. So April asked, what are some suggestions for overcoming fear? I think the best way is just kind of educating yourself, just realizing like they're not gonna, they don't want to mess with you. And it is scary almost stepping one. Like I said, I almost stuck my hand right into a timber rattlesnake. But just the chances of anything actually happening are so slim. And the chances are probably every single one of us has a snake hanging outside our house right now.
And you want them there.
But
you want them there, or you'll get overrun with rats and stuff like that. Something I always tell people is, how many times have you almost been hit by a car?
Exactly.
This week,
we all have so many times where we're like cussing people out, our hearts are pounding, or we actually did get into a bad car accident. You have way, 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 way more of a chance of getting injured in a vehicle that you ride in every day than you do of getting bit by a snake.
Yeah, and only 8,000 to 10,000 people in the entire United States get bit a year. So that's like nothing compared to the millions upon millions of people that we have here.
Yeah, so I just tell people, like, if you're nervous about hiking with snakes, just like rerun those statistics in your brain if you have to. Keep going with it.
You know, I've been in Florida 20 years, and I think I've encountered a coral snake once when I opened a building, and it slithered away because they're so bashful. And then the other day, so in 20 some years, I've seen 2 venomous snakes. And I know that if I see a snake in the water and it has a Zorro mask, I avoid it.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just common, you know, it's kind of common sense. But if you're afraid, you're afraid. And there's not, you know.
Yeah, it's a really common fear. It's a very, very common fear, unfortunately, which is a big reason why I wanted. Yeah, it's a big reason why I wanted Kristen to do this, was to kind of help people get a little bit more information and maybe start to begin to overcome those fears.
Yeah, they are really good for the environment, and they're not out to hurt us. I think those are the big takeaways.
Right after I moved into my house, I looked in my literally, I have a big eucalyptus tree, and it must have fallen and nailed the vent just right. And I had a rat snake in my toilet. And I didn't know what to do, but so I hit the button. Well, a week later, it was back, and it had crawled into my bathtub. So I boxed him up, took him outside, and now, you know, I put him next to the eucalyptus tree because there's a lot of robinia there. So, you know, they're so beneficial. You got to have them.
I'm not sure what I would do if I had a snake in my toilet.
The pygmy was bigger than the rat snake. The rat snake was a very tiny baby, maybe 8 inches long. And, you know, rat snakes are real common here.
Oh, I've gotten bit by a baby rat snake a million times because I was handling it. Don't do that at home, kids. It won't hurt you, though. It bit me a million times, but it was so small that I couldn't even feel it trying to do it. I just looked up, like, oh, well, you bite my finger, little guy, and I put him back. But those baby rat snakes, they're not mean, that's again, we don't really have them here. Well, yeah, right? We
Yeah.
have rat snakes here, right? Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was out in Florida now, when I was doing that. But they can be aggressive, but they don't have venom. So
I think mine was great. Got him out of the bathtub.
it's the joys of living in Florida.
Oh, yes.
All right. Any other questions? Let's see. Yes, Sherry, the recording is available. It's being live streamed on Facebook, and she also, yeah, she just responded.